The first thing that needs to be said is your first draft is going to suck. That's it. It's just going to be garbage.
Hey, what's up, everyone? This is Jeremy, founder of Quickmail Ontario.
Hey, and this is Jack from emailsthatsell.com. Ever wonder how to approach writing cold emails? Or maybe suffered from writer's block? If so, you're about to learn how to consistently drum up irresistible cold emails without a template anytime you need more leads. It's not magic. The secret is having a reliable copywriting process that can completely take the struggle out of writing. So in this cast, Jeremy and I are going to walk you through our own copywriting processes and show you everything you need to go from blank page to the perfect cold email. Enjoy.
Hey, Jack, what are we going to talk about today?
The cold email writing process.
What's that?
It's what happens when you sit down in the chair in front of your computer about to put together a platinum cold email, something that's impossible to ignore. What does that process look like? What do you need when you sit down? And how do you actually go from the blank page to a damn good cold email? Now, this is one of my favorite topics here. As a copywriter, pretty interested in listening to how other prolific writers get words on a page. Some of my favorite books are about writing. I recommend Stephen King's On Writing if you're remotely interested in the topic. But let's keep this within cold email. And just before we hit record, I was telling Jeremy, this is going to be a bit of a challenging episode for me because talking about the process of cold email involves a lot of different areas. And I'm going to do my best to focus it in on just what goes on in a copywriter's head when they're putting together drafts and a final version of a cold email.
What is the first thing that I need to keep in mind or first thing that I need to consider when I want to start writing my cold email?
Yeah, so the writing process doesn't actually start with writing. It starts with research. If you sit down trying to come up with the next best template the internet's ever seen without doing a proper amount of research, you're going to struggle. You're going to come up with garbage, basically.
Dude, I don't get it. I just downloaded like 50 best templates. I mean, it's good enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, it actually is good enough if you've done a ton of research because the templates just are there to help you structure the email. What really gets a reply is if you've matched the benefit to somebody's needs, to the right person, all these things that research helps you answer. So in short, I'll give a resource and then I'll explain sort of what you need to accomplish in the research phase in order to good job writing here. You need to look up Ian Brody's email persuasion book on Amazon and download it because in it describes this research phase really well. It's not about cold email, but he talks about the different areas that you need to uncover about your prospect's mentality when you approach them with an email. So for example, your prospect has a certain number of fears that they are showing up to their inbox with. They have a certain number of desires, both public and secret. They got responsibilities. They have objections that are already in their mind. So it's very helpful to know these things about your prospect before reaching out. And you also, in addition to knowing about what's going on in the brain of your prospect, you need to know your product, specifically the benefits. Features are not that important. People don't care. It's just how will it change their life for the better? You need to know two more things, the value proposition. So how exactly can you offer this benefit so that it really does reduce one of their pain points, or it fulfills a need, or it puts fears to rest? How does it really change the way that they work? And then finally, you need to know what to ask of your prospect. And all of these can be answered with proper research.
We need to consider the audience and not really think about ourselves like any writer will do when they're actually starting cold email.
Yeah, exactly.
What does that mean exactly, taking care of the audience? So you mentioned that you need to know their fear, their desire, their objections, like everything. And one thing that I personally find useful as well is not to think of the audience as a whole, but just like pinpoint one person. So like visualize Jack, for example, or Jeremy, or whoever is your persona, and then just write for that person and not write to the audience. So you may actually define your audience very well, but you need to still write for one person.
Exactly. I actually keep a spreadsheet of the needs, fears, struggles, objections, desires of the prospect. And as I'm doing research, I'll add sort of phrases, or even better, I'll just copy testimonials that I grab and put them in the respective category here. So
nice.
I may read a testimonial that says, I was worried of my website crashing when we got a certain amount of traffic, but now with this hosting provider, I don't have to worry about that. So I would just copy paste that fear and put it into the category of fears. And so I'll just, as I'm doing research, just populate this spreadsheet that has this inner dialogue of my ideal prospect so that I can do a better job of speaking their language and sort of entering the conversation that's already going on in their mind with this cold email even better.
That's nice. So I love the idea of the spreadsheet. Do you actually use that to structure your email? It's like a recipe, like a little bit of salt, a little bit of pepper. It says, hey, I'm going to put like a little bit of fear, a little bit of desire. And do you actually have something like that? Or do you actually structure it with different campaigns? Let's try to target fear. Let's try to target desire. Let's try to target, different things.
When I start off writing a cold email, I actually will look through the things that I've grabbed from my research, and I will paste them into a document to start working on the cold email. So for example, something that I usually do is I will grab one benefit from the product or service, put on the page, and then I will select just one of these needs or fears or struggles that the prospect's going with, and I will drop that into the document as well and start to play with how the benefit solves that particular struggle or answers this objection or delivers the desire. So in short, this is the building blocks of a cold email. It's obviously nowhere from a first draft, but I need to make sure that I'm including one main benefit and at least one of the needs or fears or struggles, objections, desires of my prospects so that the email is relevant and speaking to something they really care about instead of what a lot of us do in the beginning of just talking about ourselves, our company, our product. And those are the emails that are easy to trash. It's when you really make something that's brain dead beneficial to a prospect where they want to reply.
One important thing is also that this is probably not like a static process. So we do tend to rewrite or draft or email as we get more feedback from people like, hey, this is not interesting for me. I don't do X, for example. And you could say, oh, okay, maybe I could put that as an objection in my email and therefore you do version 2 and so on. So I guess my question is like, at what point do you say like, it's good enough, let's give it a go and let's start with that rather than keeping on refining in isolation with yourself, trying to get to version 2, 3, 4, 5, even before you haven't sent even version 1 to the market?
So the first thing that needs to be said is your first draft is going to suck. That's it. It's just going to be garbage. And
thanks for the honesty here.
But this is crucial. If you're listening and you get one thing out of this cast from me, it should be that your first draft should suck.
But what do I do if I have like a market with just like 1,000 person?
Well, okay. So what I mean is your first draft is going to be terrible, but before send that email, you're going to revise the draft. So actually a lot of my emails that get sent out, this is the 33rd draft that I'm going through. But the reason why I believe in having a crappy first draft and that you should make dozens of drafts of an email is it completely solves the problem of the blank page. So if you've ever fired up, I don't know, Quickmail or Google Drafts or TextEdit and just said, crap, what am I going to put down? Two things help with writer's block. I mean, I haven't had writer's block in years because I've been using these two things. One, come with research. So ideally, a bunch of copy-pasted testimonials or things on a sales page that you've seen that work really well. And also realizing that you need to go through at least a dozen drafts before you consider sending that email. And so now this blank page isn't that scary. It's a place to sort of brain dump a bunch of ideas until it slowly starts looking like a coherent email. And from there, you sort of take it from bronze to gold to platinum.
That's awesome for people who got writer blockers. I don't have it. I almost have the opposite problem, which is as I'm going to revise draft after draft, I'm going to have like, ooh, I got another idea that I want to try. And usually this is like pretty drastically different. So to give you an example is, rather than actually going and pre-selling someone, I may think like, ooh, I'm going to provide expertise to help them and then get market research. Or, hey, I'm going to do actually a go-to market. That may actually work better on this angle. And then I'm getting like stuck into this idea generation loop that, never ends up. And then at the end, it's just like, I don't know what email to send. Gosh, add me, Jack, what do I do?
Okay, first of all, you should jump for joy, pop champagne bottles, because that's an amazing problem, talking about having almost too many ideas. And I think for you, you may not need to listen to this blank page advice because you happen to have, it sounds like, a problem of...
It's almost the opposite.
Yeah, okay, so...
I need to do like multiple versions and send them.
That's the whole reason why I am allowing myself many, many drafts, because as you're revising and just almost brain dumping, just if you're completely stuck, put a timer for 10 minutes and do not allow yourself to stop typing. You can write anything you want. It can be complete garbage, but I promise you after 10 minutes, new ideas will have bubbled to the surface and you will be able to use those for new drafts, or you can even select the best one and just start writing on that. But for someone like you who has so many ideas or options to send, that's phenomenal. But why don't you just sort of list them out and rank them? Like by now, I'll pick on you a little bit. You know what works and you know what probably won't. So I think you should be able to take a pretty objective view of the possibilities that you've come up with and pick maybe the best couple. But here's the nice thing is, as a cold emailer, we're allowed to send follow-ups. So if you've come up with 10 ideas, good for you. You've probably got the foundation for the first 10 emails in your cold email campaign.
Oh, that's an interesting question, actually, and maybe actually worth for its own cast. But I don't believe that we necessarily could change strategy in the life of the cold email sequence, so that, if you're actually asking for pre-selling someone, then the next email is hard to say like, actually, let's jump on a call. I'd like to share, all my expertise and maybe get to understand your business a bit more. And then the next one, you just ask them, what existing solutions do you have? Or the next one is like, who is the best in your market? It's just like so weird. You're just not going to get anywhere.
Okay. But remember, we had a couple casts where we talked about calls to action. And for the most part, it's a good idea to switch up what you're asking your prospect to do. So
Sure.
should you take a drastic turn on email 3? No, it probably would sound weird, but 2 things you can do. One, test out a couple ideas in separate campaigns. So maybe one campaign is 3 parts and it's all geared on pre-selling. The next one is all geared on finding the right person to talk to, etc. But also, I would imagine that some of the ideas that you're coming up with can probably be mentioned in a 5th follow-up where you can pivot a little bit. So, okay, maybe you've struck out. You thought you had this awesome offer where you wanted to share some expertise. That's obviously not worked. So maybe you try and figure out the better person to get in contact with, or even try sending, is this somewhat on your radar? But maybe one thing that may help our listeners, if we get a little bit more concrete, maybe we can use Quickmail as an example so that we can talk about sitting down and this writing process.
Sure. Okay, I got a great example on this one, actually. So for most of you know that I'm working on the new version. It's not quite ready yet, but it becomes at that point where it'll be interesting to, start cold email campaign just for trying to get the ball rolling on the new version. And it's at that point where I can't really ask people to go on it because it's not quite ready. So do I go and pre-sell them? Do I go and then say, hey, what version do you have? I'd like to build the next something. Or what competitor do you use? So maybe, I can build a better version because I'm at that stage where it's useful to get more feedback. Or, there's a ton of possibilities on way to go about things at this stage.
Okay, so if you want to start writing this cold email, make things easy on yourself and just pick one strategy. And let's say we've made this list, looked it over carefully, because this is one of the few super high value activities you can do in a cold email campaign, is decide what strategy you're going to use in order to get these replies, right? So take your time on this. But let's say we decided that, okay, it would be really great to get prospects to provide some feedback on the latest version. We think this is the best approach, right?
Perfect.
So having this sort of at the top of the page is going to help focus our ideas now on generating the best email within this approach, okay? So at this point, it's time to dig into our research and figure out, okay, so we know basically what the CTA is going to be. So actually, we could probably start there. So just drop in like, would you mind sharing a bit of feedback?
Love it.
So boom, it's no longer a blank page. Life is getting better. Okay. So now what's missing? What's missing is the value prop. Like, why should somebody take time out of their busy day and give you feedback? And one other aspect is like this thing in the prospect's mind. It's the needs or the fears, the struggle that's going on in the background when you send them this email. This is their life that they're dealing with. How can we bring that into this email? Okay. So we've got a couple of things. Call to action. We're going to talk about what's in it for them. I'm almost sort of working backwards here. So before we ask, I want to say like something compelling that will say, oh, wow, I kind of do want to provide feedback here. So I don't know, Jeremy, can you brainstorm with me?
I got usually a few reasons for that. The first one is people like to be involved with the design. Like, for example, they've been struggling with doing X for a long time. And if only you could come and do X, then they'll be like super happy. And they're maybe currently using like a software that is subpar for them. So you could always ask them things. The value proposition will be like, hey, if you let me know what you're struggling with, there's a high chance I could actually include that in the software. So that's an easy one.
Okay, boom. So let's pick that one because remember, we're going to pick one benefit and add it in this email. We're not going to overcomplicate things. One benefit, and this one sounds great.
Oh, that's an interesting one. Usually my writing methods is actually I write the email with as much things as I could find, and then I split them to actually have them as part of follow-ups.
Ah, okay.
And that's actually something that would benefit to a lot of people judging by their first email. Because, even in our tear downs, it's very obvious that people put too much thing in the first email. So that's basically, I'm just writing with one email, all my follow-ups at the same time kind of way.
Interesting. That's cool. So hopefully if you're listening, you're saying, okay, there's more than one writing process here. Nobody's going to say your writing process is bad if it produces good cold emails.
Well, either it's mine or it's yours. Everything else is bad, of course, Jack.
Especially mine, but right. Okay. All right. So we're almost there, actually.
Cool.
So we're working backwards. So at the bottom of this blank page, we've got the call to action. Would you share feedback? Above that, we've got the reason why they want to share feedback. It's, hey, if this is something, if you notice something you're missing, there's a good chance I can bake it in. And so you'll get that.
Yeah. Or, I can throw in like, hey, you'll be one of the first one to try the product. And
it's basically like it'll be built for you.
Yeah.
Now, there's only one thing missing here when it comes to cold email, and that's sort of like winning their attention or showing them that you've done enough homework in order to get this conversation started. So it's like, this is where you explain to them why the hell you're reaching out to them in the first place. And if you do a good job with this first sentence, you'll capture the attention and show them that, okay, this person is worth at least 10 more seconds to read the rest of the email that they just wrote because they've showed me that they've carefully chosen me. So now what we need to do is just maybe we use the help of a merge tag or an intro that explains why we reached out to them. And then basically we've got the framework for a good cold email. So for example, why might we be reaching out to a person, asking them if they want to try out cold email software? Since we're using Quickmail as an example here, is there anything that comes to mind that we might be able to use to drop in for this intro? Hey, I'm reaching out because
I received a lot of cool emails, and obviously you're not doing it. No, I'm kidding.
Actually, that's an amazing idea. So you could put a campaign together for people sending cold emails to your inbox, and that would be.
I already do have that. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, but for the purpose of this sort of walkthrough, this is what we're talking about here. It's a way to kick things off, to show them, oh, Jeremy knows I send cold email because, gosh, I sent him one. So, okay, that makes sense. A bridge is built. Okay, so.
Yeah, that could be, for example, I've seen them demonstrating a tool or a process that is subpar and could be, improved with Quickmail. And actually, I did that a very long time ago. I remember when I started Quickmail, that's how I gained a few customers, just because I was watching a YouTube video seeing how someone was doing it manually and just, reach out to this person and then demonstrated him that there's a much better way of doing it.
Perfect. So now we've got the missing piece for this email draft. I'm calling it a draft because it's still very early. We're going to polish it, but all of the body parts are there. We've got an intro that explains why we're reaching out to them specifically. We've got a clear benefit to providing feedback, and the call to action is straightforward and it's clearly asking them to provide feedback.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're just wondering what call to action you could use, just go to quickmail.io/goodies and you'll find massive CTA swap file with lots of CTA you can pick from.
What we did backwards, we're basically using the AIDA copywriting formula. AIDA means attention, interest, desire, action. And if you ever get stuck, you can just write AIDA in new lines on a blank page. And there, for attention, use that first sentence to build the bridge. Why are you reaching out to them? Show them that your email is worth them reading. That's the attention and interest right there. Desire is the value prop, sort of what's in it for them to take the next step. And then action, that's your call to action, straightforward. But we've sort of gone through a bit of the process where you notice it's not entirely creative, so to speak. It's referring back to a spreadsheet with notes that you gathered from sales pages and testimonials online.
I actually disagree with that in terms of, I think it's extremely creative, but it's very mechanical in the way the approach is done and the structure is done.
Just something to keep in mind, you're not approaching the page without any tools or assistance. You've got things already in place.
Yeah.
And what's nice about this approach is you don't have to lean on existing templates out there. Instead, you're sort of taking it from the prospect's mentality first and letting that pull you towards a finished email draft.
Yeah, and I really love this sort of reverse approach, because very often when we start as a writer from the introduction, we have the tendency to introduce ourselves, and then the rest of the email is just so focused on ourselves that it's really bad.
True.
But instead, if we actually flip it on its head, then it's very obvious that we have to think about what do I want them to execute and what's in it for them. And then at the end, just introduce or get the attention.
I've got one last tip here for cold email copywriters out there. When you sit down, before you type a single keystroke on your keyboard, you can repeat this a couple times, either out loud or just quietly in your head. Nobody cares about me. It's only about them. Nobody cares about me. It's only about them. And if you say that, I mean, in the beginning, I literally would say this 10 times just because it's so natural to say I and my and we, and that makes for a very boring email.
I'm struggling to know in your template, where do I put the button for buying and my credit and the credit card details?
Yeah, I mean, but the cool thing is if you really think hard about what's going on in your prospect's life before you press send, chances are you're going to write an email that resonates with them, that they may hopefully thank you for sending. That's when you know you're doing a good job, when you're getting replies and when you're able to improve the lives of the people receiving your emails. That's sort of the golden rule for email copywriting, is send emails your prospects wants to receive.
Okay, great. I got one last question then for you, Jack. How do I approach A/B testing when I'm effectively writing a cold email?
A/B testing is actually kind of similar to the blank page fresh campaign idea, but it's a little bit easier. Reason why, if you're A/B testing two different emails in the same campaign, yes, you want them to be different, but they'll likely have a similar goal, meaning you're still going to ask them to provide feedback, but you may do it in a unique way. And Jeremy and I have been advocating to test wildly different A/B test variants, especially when it's in the same campaign. So in my opinion, 80% of the work already has been done, because in this email, you want them to provide feedback. Now it's just coming up with a novel way of asking them to do so. But here's sort of the magic, and this is super helpful for me for creating A/B tests. I just go back to my spreadsheet with the benefits, fears, desires, goals, objections, and I just can pick a different one off the list, say, okay, well, this benefit's pretty helpful and it actually helps them achieve this desire. Boom. So I've got the material here that I'm going to use, and I'm going to recycle the CTA, sort of. It'll change, but it's still going to ask them, would you be open to providing feedback. So just refer back to your research notes. It makes this so much easier. And I mean, I think if more of us did this, we might even start saying that writing a good email is kind of easy. It's just the research that's tough. But don't get me wrong. It's uncovering what really matters. That's freaking tough. But once you have those in a list, okay, you can draft a nice email from there.
Yeah, I guess it also helps with a sort of mini case study. Basically, a few lines just saying like, hey, this company just saved X amount of money, if this is about saving money or things like that.
Just imagine you had that case study in a spreadsheet or a doc, it doesn't matter, on your desk. You sort of want these clippings, these things you can swipe together to put a good email in place. It's like you're basically collecting firepower that you can use. So hopefully research is where you spend a ton of your work, but then the writing part, you can do glances and almost it's like copy paste in order to get the body parts of the email together. And then from there, massage the sentences so it smooths, it's short and sweet, and it's all about the prospect.
Yeah, and if you have, write a blog, just send a link to your spreadsheet.
Yeah. No more writer's block. Your first 10 drafts are allowed to suck. I just said it, so you can rest at ease. You can just put whatever you want until you're ready to edit it later.
All right, Jack.
Now you know the inner workings of my cold email copywriting. Hopefully this process helps you out when it's time to write some more good emails.
That's right. Thanks, Jack. All right, there was a ton of things to take away from this cast. I'm gonna go ahead and summary the top 3 key learnings the best I can. Number 1, before you write anything down, make sure you have enough material from research to start with. That is, along with your audience, you want to write down your prospects' needs, fears, struggles, objections, desires, along with testimonials and case studies if you can. Number 2, start with the end in mind. Write your CTA first, then move to the value proposition, and finally, the introduction to get a well-structured cold email. In doubt, you can always follow the AIDA model that we talked about. Number 3, for people with writer block, remember that what matters is to start putting things on a page and keep writing. For those who can't stop generating ideas, like me, rank your idea from best to worst or use them for inspiration on follow-ups.
Hey, cold emailer.
Yeah, you.
If you got some value from this episode, give us a high five by sharing a 2-sentence review on iTunes.
Or Stitcher or TuneIn. That works too.
It's a quick way to help other growth-minded folks like us find this podcast
so they can send awesome emails
and make everyone's inbox a better place. Thanks.